Good morning and welcome to the Economic Recovery Support Interventions webinar hosted by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in collaboration with the National Empowerment Fund, the Department of Small Business Development, the Department of Employment and Labor, and the UFI. And the purpose of the webinar is to unpack the economic recovery support interventions entrusted or rather announced by Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Ibrahim Patel. Now, the 3.75 billion rand package is for the restoration of businesses adversely affected during the violent looting and unrest that took place in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng just last month. I'm your host, Cindy Mabi. Thank you again for joining us. And to set the scene and to give us the context to government's commitment to stabilizing the nation and growing the economy, we're joined by Ms. Susan Mangole, who is the Acting Deputy Director General at the DTIC. And she'll give us or unpack the government's economic rebuilding package. Welcome, DDG, and your time starts now.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to all attendees. And thank you so much, Cindy Mabi, as the program director. And thank you for these opportunities. Like you have mentioned, we are doing this talk in partnership with the Industrial Development Corporation, the National Empowerment Fund, SASRIA, and UIF. So I'm going to ask that they flight my slide in terms of what I'm going to be talking about. This is the government support as announced a couple of weeks ago following the unrest or in KZN and Gauteng. So part of the support include the support measures and finance measures implemented by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition with its entities, IDC, NEF, also in collaboration with SASRIA and the Unemployment Insurance Fund. The next slide, Tato. So the support follows the unrest and as well as some of the activities that the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition has been undertaking during the unrest. Part of the intervention include meeting with various stakeholders as well as sectors just to assist them through the unrest. The department conducted a survey during the unrest following after a couple of weeks, which actually attracted over 1,300 respondents. The department also set up a hotline where companies can contact the department when they require assistance. Included to that was also an email where companies are able to report if they need support in terms of during the unrest. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Ibrahim Patel, announced the economic recovery following the President's announcement that the government will assist affected companies in these provinces. The minister has announced that the government has set aside 3.7 billion to support these companies to be able to preserve the jobs and also sustain some of the disrupted supply chain. This is part of the broader 38 billion relief package as announced by the Minister of Finance, which will also be implemented by both UIF and SASRIA. The next slide. Coming from the survey, what is actually most of the respondents indicated that they have been affected. There were those that were affected by having to close their businesses. However, there are 900 businesses that have indicated that they've lost assets, they had significant property damage. Through that, we were asking them if they will be able to recover and as well as try and retain some of the employment. 43% of the respondents estimated that they will recover within a month if they receive proper support, with 7% that predicted that it will take them more than a year. Coming from that, the next slide. In terms of the split down, 74% of the respondents that have been affected are coming from KwaZulu-Natal, with 26% from Gauteng. The most critical question that we were asking, we wanted to check the percentage in terms of the insured and the uninsured. Hence, we brought Sasria today to be part of the discussion, to be able to then unpack the insurance of what they cover, as well as the process. From that, we had 57% that are uninsured that require the support to be able to rebuild as well as restart the businesses. So from that, that's when then government set aside a particular support to support these companies. Next slide. In terms of the municipalities, from the respondent that have indicated, what we have seen is that majority of the respondents, both from the insured and the uninsured, they're coming from city of Ekurhuleni, city of Joburg, and eThekwini. In eThekwini, 26% of the respondents are coming from the township, KwaMashu, Umlazi, and Verulam. In the city of Johannesburg, 46% comes from Soweto. So this is the breakdown in terms of the companies that have been affected, that had the damages, that had lost stock, that require some sort of support, be it the insurance claim or the support to rebuild through various supports. The next slide. One of the questions that we were asking companies was in terms of the damages as well as the business losses that they have actually encountered. Estimated to the damages, it was a number of 3.5 billion coming from the 675 affected companies in Gauteng and KZN. The loss in terms of the orders and some of the supply chains that have been disrupted, the companies estimated 6 billion. There is also a potential job loss of up to 4,000 as an estimate, because what we're asking the companies was that how long, if they have to recover now, will they be able to bring all the jobs back into the economy? This is because part of the support, we need to make sure that we preserve employment. We encourage companies to bring all the jobs back into the economic activity. In terms of the sectors, majority of the sectors is from retail, given some of the malls that were affected, followed by services and then manufacturing. And we have also responded from the supply chain that indicated the damages that they have encountered. The next slide. So through this engagement, government was able to set aside support to support the affected companies with various instruments to make sure that they are able to rebuild as quick as possible. So the minister announced 3.7 billion a couple of weeks ago, which is split between the DTIC, the Industrial Development Corporation, the National Empowerment Fund. The next slide. The first support that we are offering is the Critical Infrastructure Reconstruction Program. So this is a cost-sharing grant of up to 50% of qualifying infrastructure, capped at 30 million. So the support will be available to affected companies in KZN to support them to rebuild, as well as partner with them in terms of fixing some of the infrastructure that have been affected. The next slide. What is critical about the support under the critical infrastructure program is that the entity must be a registered legal entity in South Africa. The applicant can still be a municipality in affected provinces, both in Gauteng and KZN, and then also some of the state-owned agencies based on the strategic nature of the project as determined by the DTIC. The entity need to have, the applicant need to have a valid tax clearance from SARS. They also require a resolution that authorizes the application and the infrastructure project. One of the critical elements is that they must be in compliance with all other statutory regulations in South Africa. The next slide. In terms of the Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC has set aside 1.5 billion to support affected companies, with 1.4 billion be it a post-unrest business recovery fund to assist all businesses that operate within the sectors of the IDC. Then the second one is the 100 million grant allocation to provide technical and financial assistance to small businesses in townships, rural areas, and small towns. The other support is the 10 million CSI allocation to support food security and recovery efforts in affected communities. The last one, in addition to all of the above, is the money set aside under the Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Program of 400 million Economic Stabilization Fund. This is intended to support manufacturing companies affected by the unrest and impacted by the supply chain disruption across the country. This is offered as an interest-free loan through the IDC, which then will be made available for companies to buy machinery and working capital. The next slide. Still unpacking the two support from the IDC, what is critical is that with regard to the post-unrest business recovery fund, it offers a maximum of 30 million as a bridging finance, because the support is open to both the uninsured companies and the insured companies that are still awaiting processing of their claims from various insurance companies. So the MSEP, like I've indicated, it's actually kept at 50 million and is interest-free for a period for the first 24 months. The next slide. The next slide. The next one is the 100 million that the IDC had set aside. The previous slide, there is the 100 million that has been set aside for SMMEs that are affected in the township. With regard to this support, we have both the NEF and the IDC in the panel that will then be able to highlight the process in terms of how to access. From the National Empowerment Fund, they also offer an interest-free loan to all affected businesses. The companies need to demonstrate that they were affected by the riots and the unrest. They also cover both the insured and the uninsured. With the insured, it's a bridging facility that they are offering, and the applicant need to demonstrate that they will be able to restore the jobs within the first 12 months that they are operational. The next slide. On the NEF one, like I've indicated, the maximum is 10 million. It's priced at 0%, and then it's got a moratorium of 12 months. So for the whole 60 months there will not be any interest. For the first 12 months, companies will not be required to repay anything. This is to allow companies to recover as well as to bring all the jobs as quick as possible. The next slide. This is the contact details, where affected companies can contact us. From the DTIC is recovery@the-dtic.gov.za. They can also go on the DTIC website to have all the document and application form for the critical infrastructure program. For the IDC, you can write to IDC recovery@idc.co.za. For the NEF is recovery@nefcorp.co.za. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much, DDG, Ms. Mangole, for the opening remarks and also the scene setter that this is essentially a collaborative effort between the ministry or the shareholder ministry and the various agencies, including the NEF, IDC, CIFA, UIF, etc., in trying to rebuild and restore the economy and stabilize businesses that have been worstly affected. So thank you very much for that. It's a very short program, and I just want to acknowledge my co-moderators as well, who will break down the segments in terms of the intensity, one, that the government has applied in ensuring that the necessary resources, funding, and expertise are allocated to the businesses that are affected. Then we'll also have on the side of business to reciprocate that kind of effort and say, this is the part that we are willing to do. So I just like to acknowledge my co-moderators on the program as well. So our next speaker is from the UIF, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, and they will be speaking about supporting affected businesses in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. Sicela ukubulisa uMr. Buthelezi as he starts his presentation. Good morning to you, Makosonke Buthelezi, and welcome. You have 10 minutes, sir.
I'm Makosonke Buthelezi. I'm Director of Communication and Marketing at the UIF. I'm just going to be sharing with you the intervention that the department has come up with. Can we go to the next slide? So the minister signed a directive on the 6th of August, which established what we aptly called WABU. It's workers affected by unrest. So this is a temporary relief scheme to assist employers who have been affected by the unrest in Gauteng and in KZN. So this was gazetted on the 10th of August, I think sometime last week or 2 weeks ago. And the purpose of WABU is, as it outlines, there is to establish a temporary relief to assist vulnerable workers in terms of Section 5D of the UIF Act. And secondly, it is to provide the payment of temporary financial relief to the vulnerable workers and set up the application process. So who is the target group? It is the workers who are going to be partially paid or won't receive income at all, owing to the closure of the affected businesses, whilst the businesses are in the phase of rebuilding and there's no income and there's no money coming into the business. This then will come in to bring relief to those affected workers. How are we going to pay? We're going to pay a flat rate of 3,500 rands to those affected workers. And the purpose really is to ensure that we cover as many workers as we possibly can. And the payment method, usually with TERS, those who have applied for TERS know that when we started initially, the payment was actually the employer could choose to have the money paid into them or paid into the employees. But this time around, the directive is very clear to say the benefit has to directly go into the employees that are affected into their bank accounts. And we have learned some lessons through TERS, where if you pay the money or the benefit into the employer's account, sometimes the money doesn't reach the workers, the employees. If it does, sometimes it is not the exact amount that we had paid to the employer to in turn pass it on to the employee. So hence the decision is to pay directly into the employee's account. And we want to urge the employers to provide us with the accurate details of their workers, of their employees, their bank accounts, so that there are no delays, because most of the time, this causes a lot of delay. You find that we pay the money, it bounces back, because the banking details are not correct. There are instances where if, for example, the employer may have paid in advance to the employees and they will have to submit sufficient proof for that, then the commissioner may decide, that, okay, we will pay the money into the employer's account, but obviously it's subject to meeting certain conditions. How long is this going to take? We're going to pay from 9 July up until the 15th of December, because that is the estimated time that we feel if you are rebuilding as a business, we felt that for us, it makes sense that we should pay for such a period. However, as we said, this scheme or this payment, the duration of the scheme will be reviewed every 2 weeks. Next slide. Next slide, Tato. Thank you. So the application procedure, thanks. The employer is going to be the one that applies on behalf of the employees, and the reason there is simple. We know these are COVID times. We don't want a situation where we have thousands and thousands of workers going to the labor centers to form long queues because we are struggling as it is now. So that is the first thing, is to ensure that we comply with the lockdown regulations. And secondly, we are aware that most employers, most affected workers or employees are more than hundreds or some into thousands. So it will be much easier if the employer apply for those 1,000 workers. And what is good is that the employer will obviously be applying online as it happens with TERS, and we will still use the TERS portal to accept the applications, and everyone or anyone who's familiar with the portal, that is the address there, uifecc.labour.gov.za. There are certain qualifying conditions that the employer will have to satisfy in order for the application to be successful. And the first thing is that they must be registered with the UIF, or if not registered yet, you must register with the UIF. And the reason for that is that obviously we need to make sure that we pay the monies not to a bogus entity or business. So you must be registered with the fund, and the closure of the business must be directly linked to the destruction or damage, looting of a workplace in these two provinces. And you must provide these details of that, of the damage or looting, and there must be proof to that effect. And one of the things that we are going to require is the case number that we have opened with SAPS. We are in the process of talking to SAPS to work with us. We are also in the process of talking. We had a meeting with DTIC yesterday to assist us in terms of the documentary proof that we will require. And I know that colleagues are also will be initiating talks with SASTRA, because we have to make sure that we close the risk as far as possible. We have seen with COVID TERS, if you don't address the risks upfront, the system will be vulnerable to fraud opportunities or opportunists. So that is why we are trying to make sure that we link up with other institutions that can assist us in terms of determining the validity of the claims that are submitted to us. So we're going to need proof that your business, the closure of the business, or is linked to the unrest that have happened. And obviously, you'll have to accept the terms of the schemes, that the conditions, and anything that the Director General, the Minister may require at some point as documentary proof. So where are we at the moment? I indicated that this was gazetted on the 10th, a week ago. So where we are now, ICT and our business operations are finalizing the user requirements that will obviously include the kind of documents that we are going to need in order to process the claim. And this tends to be a very long process. However, we understand the urgency and the desperation of the people who are affected by this. So we're trying to work as hard as we can so that we can be able at least to start accepting the applications. The target date is next week, Wednesday, the 25th. So we'll be working flat out and testing the systems. However, we need to bear in mind that we must make sure that the systems are watertight and we don't leave any room to error, and we don't have any weaknesses in the systems that will enable fraudsters to come in and access funds that they do not deserve. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buthelezi, for your remarks and also guidance in terms of how the UIF is assisting businesses affected by the recent looting and violence. There is also a few questions in the Q&A on the chat box as well. If you please would attend to it, there are a number of questions around how long it takes and just generally frustration that businesses have had in trying to access the necessary aid. But that was Mr. Makosonke Buthelezi. He is with the UIF, which is one of government's departments that is providing support to affected companies in KZN and in Gauteng. And in case you've just joined us, welcome to the Discussion with Business webinar, which will unpack government's economic recovery building, or rather economic rebuilding package announced by Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, a few weeks ago. And we had Ms. Mangole, who's the acting DDG in the DTIC earlier on, who unpacked the various instruments that government has put in place for this very purpose of creating stable economy, a stable society, and also restoring the businesses that have been affected. And I'm your program director, Cindy Mabi. Our next speaker is from SASRIA, the South African Special Risks Insurance Association, and they have a very extremely important task of assisting businesses that were not spared in the looting and destruction. Mr. Themba Sibiya is here to take us through the nuts and bolts of SASRIA's role in supporting businesses. Mr. Sibiya, it's over to you.
Thank you, Cindy, and thanks for the opportunity to be granted airtime and to present what SASRIA is all about and what we have done up to this stage. So SASRIA, as everyone knows, I'm not sure if my presentation is up, Cindy. Okay. All right, I will do without the presentation. So SASRIA is a short-term insurance company that was formed in 1979. It is a public enterprise organization that is listed under Schedule 3B, and we are a non-life insurance company. So what does that mean? We function like any other short-term insurance company in the country, and we've been in existence for about 40 years now. And what gave rise to the formation of SASRIA was the June 1976 Soweto uprising. So at that time, the insurance market went to the government and said, we cannot absorb these types of losses, as you have seen what transpired in July this year. And they said, let us reinsure all these losses and write out these perils that are SASRIA related. And we have a legislative monopoly that was set up in 1979, which is the Material Damages and Losses Act, and it has given rise to SASRIA. So as an organization, SASRIA is not known to most of the people. I think it only became now post-loss that people started understanding who SASRIA is and what SASRIA does as an organization. But it is mainly driven by our business model. The business model that we have, we do not deal with clients directly. So any other person who wants to take up SASRIA must either go directly to other insurance companies or speak to any other broker that is available in the country. And then they'll be able to gain access to our products. So once you've gone to the broker or the insurance company, you'll be issued with a policy. Premium will be paid to that particular entity. And then on a monthly basis, we receive notification from all other insurance companies in the country declaring the premium that they have raised on a month-to-month basis. And that is how we work and operate. When there's a claim, we will deal directly with the client, and no payment will be made to any other entity other than the insured individual. The perils that we cover riots, we cover strikes, we cover labor disturbance, we cover terrorism, we cover civil commotion, and we also cover public disorder. So if you've seen the events of June 2021, the activities that took place there, it's not something we can run away from. These are events that fall squarely within the ambit of the SASRIA mandate and the perils that we are legislated to cover. The product line, what properties do we cover and what assets do we cover? We cover material damage. That material damage includes your buildings, it includes your contents, it includes your electronic equipment, it includes stadiums, it includes municipal properties, any insurable asset within the country that is of a fixed nature can be covered. We also cover money. We cover goods in transit. If you've seen the trucks in Moy River, those trucks and those goods are covered by us. We also cover business interruption. So which means all the affected businesses in KZN and Gauteng can claim for business interruption cover. And that can either be for gross profit, net profit, or standing charges that they may have or working expenses. So it would depend what the insured would want to cover at that point. How the claims process functions, there must be a trigger, which is an incident. The client must suffer damage. And then once the client has suffered damage, the client will then notify the insurer of the loss. The insurer will then look at what the cost of the claim is. What we have done so far with this incident, we call it a CAT event. We've allowed agent companies, which is other insurance companies, to settle claims up to 1 million. And we've given all insurance companies that are participating in the program money to pay these claims. And anything below 1 million we will not see. And we've given a float. I think to date, we are close to about 700 million in terms of what has been shared with insurance companies to facilitate expedient payment of claims. And then for losses above 100 million, obviously there will be an appointed loss adjuster who will investigate the loss and quantify the damage, which is where we are now with most of the losses. And those losses will then be reported to SASRA as a first notification of loss. And SASRA will then start looking into those claims. And then what follows after reporting is the assessment of the claim. After the assessment of the claim, there is a payout to the insured. So we have an appetite to reinstate. We don't want to pay buildings and people just run away with the money and then they do not reinstate these buildings. Our appetite as an organization is that for each and every building that has been set alight or damaged, we want to push that those buildings are reinstated. I think the previous colleagues have indicated the issue of protecting jobs and making sure that there is active economy post this loss. So that is what we're trying to do. Any physical damage to a building must be reinstated. And then we will then continue to make sure that the people who were there prior to the loss still sees those buildings and then still enjoy the economic activity that took place even prior to the loss. And then post that, we'll go to our reinsurers to say, guys, we have suffered this CAT event. These are the damages that we have incurred. Please pay us money for what is due to us. So SASRA, as an organization, also takes cover for itself to mitigate a huge impact on claims, and that is where our reinsurance comes in. If we look at the July events, 30% of the losses are from Gauteng, and then 70% of the losses are from KZN. Now, that is a huge impact on the KZN economy. And if you look at what has been claimed for, I think we are estimating the losses now to be between 15 and 20 billion, which is the calculation that SASRA has calculated. Now, why would we have 15 to 20 billion when other people are quoting higher numbers than this one? It's driven by three scenarios. There is damage, which links to the opportunity costs, which links to the suppliers, which links to Umam Shabalala selling meat, or the taxi industry operating buses. So there's that macro operation that takes place within that space of a loss where the loss occurred. I mean, if you go to any mall, you'll see that there's more economic activity other than the store that was damaged around that area. So the 50 billion will come from all those things. The suppliers of merchandise to the malls, the suppliers of food, the suppliers of transportation, telecommunication, anything that is linked to making that area active, it's what has been lost. But we have to ask ourselves then, what is that is insured in that area? Then comes the issue of insurable assets. So within that vicinity, there are insurable assets. So we need to now define how much of those insurable assets are insured and how much of those are uninsured. And what informs our 20 billion is that most of the loss comes from the insured assets, and there's still a huge portion of buildings, properties, and personal items that are not insured. And it is a risk to the area, and it's also a risk to the country that we still have a huge proportion of assets that are still uninsured. Claims that have been received to date, we have about 90% that have been reported. 10% of those are just smaller claims, and we believe that all the large losses have been accounted for. The breakdown of our 14 billion that has already been reported into our books, 50 of those is claims that give us about 50 billion. And then about 6,000 of those claims are just smaller claims, and they are less than 50 million. And then because of the lag time in terms of reinstatement, we believe that it will take about 12 to 18 months to reinstate all the buildings. But we are we're in the process of releasing interim payments, and where possible, we'll also give clients an interim payment for stock, for electronic equipment. And if they've taken a business interruption cover, we may also engage clients and say, set up somewhere and start operating, and then those costs can be covered under the business interruption policy. So there are mechanisms that we can use to try and mitigate the loss to the insured. This would be my last one, and thank you. I think I've covered my 10 minutes, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sibia, for your presentation. And if I may please request that you go to the Q&A, specific questions around whether the interventions also cover people that were affected due to the closure as a result of the violent unrest and looting, but they were themselves were not looted per se. So please, if I may request all our panelists to go back to the Q&A and the chat room and reply to questions there. Thanks so much, Mr. Sibia.
Thanks, ma'am.
So now that the scene has been set by our previous presenters on government support, we now go to a panel discussion which will be hosted by Mr. Tammy Klassen from the DTIC, and the panel comprises of government agencies that are tasked with supporting economic rebuilding efforts. Mr. Klassen, it's over to you. Mr. Klassen, Tammy? Okay, so to recap, ladies and gentlemen, we also streaming live. I can see some of the questions saying, please share the presentation. So there are a number of interventions that are happening simultaneously in various sectors of the economy to try and bring back stability and show government's commitment to assisting affected businesses. So you want to locate yourself in the space that you're already operating in with the necessary networks that are there for you as well, in collaboration with the NEF, the IDC, and other sister agencies. Please reach out and let us know how, I beg your pardon, we can be of assistance. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the Q&A or questions that are currently on my screen. One from, is it Cornelia Mnisi, says, what happens to our small businesses based in Mpumalanga? She's currently running a boutique and they do online orders to be delivered. What kind of assistance is there in Mpumalanga? So Tammy, when you come on with your segment, please, maybe you can also touch on some of these questions that have been raised. And one from Nal Kutsia says, how many job losses occurred in the agricultural sector and what was the value of the damages done in that particular sector? One from Zakia Karim, well, oh, of course. Zakia, you asking the $1 million question on whether this recording will be shared. So we are live on all social media platforms and we're very happy to share the presentations with you as well. So having said that, let me just check if the moderator for the next segment is ready. Mr. Tammy Klassen, it's over to you. Colleagues, let me know if Mr. Klassen is available. Otherwise, in the interest of time, we'll just move to the next segment by an indication of our show of hands. Let me know as well. I'll rely on the technical producer to indicate if our next segment or panelists are available. So, you know, the webinar in itself, in discussion with industry and to give support and interventions to industries, we really appreciate the time taken from our external stakeholders and agencies as well. And Ms. Nontogozo Hadebe is an executive at Transnet who will introduce and moderate the industry and business panel discussion. Ms. Hadebe, if you'll indicate whether you are able to take this segment as we turn things around to accommodate Mr. Klassen. Ms. Hadebe?
Good morning, and thanks. Good morning. Okay, let me show my face here. I was not too sure whether I was ready, Cindy, because I've just joined as well. I had a bit of a challenge in joining the session. I didn't have.
I do apologize. Yes, thank you for availing yourself.
Yes, but we are here, and I'm hoping that my panelists are here as well. Just want to check that before we commit that we can start this session now. From our side, indeed, we will be focusing on the industry response and support in terms of the economic recovery efforts following the very, very, very unfortunate events in our country that we saw a few weeks ago. It's not something that we will want to witness again or relive, but such platforms allow us to fully appreciate the magnitude of the problems that we had and the efforts by all the stakeholders in rebuilding beyond this. So our panelists, they come from the variety of sectors in terms of the industry. We will have had the representation from Black Business Council, Gregory Mufakeng. Can I check if Greg, you are here? Show of hand. Cindy, can you help me here?
Hi, Ms. Hadebe. I think
Yes.
we're also trying to locate panelists because with the registration process, sometimes you'll find people registering as attendees and they're not being able to migrate to the speakers platform. So while we try and figure that out, let's check if Mr. Kuseni Dlamini is available and Eunice, because I can't see that on my side either.
And Eunice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm told now exactly what we had expected, or rather suspected, is that some of the panelists were on the attendees list. Now we're getting them on the right platform. So I believe Mr. Klassen is ready. And Ms. Hadebe, if you don't mind, may I please request that we go back to the original flow of the program, and that way I think your panelists would then be ready. But I really just gracefully want to appreciate you for being so agile and flexible and allowing us to move things around a little bit. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, no problem. We'll take the cue from you then. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, let's go back now to our plenary session. Mr. Tammy Klassen, I had already introduced you in terms of the interventions that government has, in terms of supporting economic rebuilding efforts. So, Mr. Klassen, are you with us?
Yes, and
Hi,
good morning.
Tammy.
Yes,
good morning, sir.
Good morning once again, Cindy. Yeah. I think my background is not so good, and my face as well because of the light, but I'm just going to try, and just for the sake of consistent bandwidth and connectivity, please allow me to switch off my camera after this introduction and people seeing my face. Ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for attending really to this very important, I think, engagement. And as you have heard from the presenters before, who actually outlined the various efforts that government is putting together to ensure that we have a sort of a consistent and collaborated effort towards us assisting these enterprises that have been affected and plagued by all these challenges. So without, of course, any waste of time, we have got the following people who are panel members: Mr. Manoj Sionath, who is from the Industrial Development Corporation. And we also have Mr. Mzobantu Daimani from the NEF. We also have Makusonge Butelezi, who also presented from the UIF. Mr. Temba Sibia, who also equally did the last presentation from the Sasria group, and the various packages they've been presented. And I think the overarching lead presentation, which was done by Ms. Susan Mangole, who's actually been very pivotal in ensuring that all the structures and coordination efforts have been put towards ensuring that every one of the government entities and agencies work collaboratively. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are grateful for this effort, but I know, Cindy, I may have missed some of the questions that we read earlier as you were introducing this us as a speaker and all that. But I would love to probably start with the maybe I'm not going to go in any order, but maybe I will start with the IDC on what maybe they have picked up as the questions which they would love to respond to. Can we go to Mr. Manoj Sionath, please?
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to all our fellow colleagues and business colleagues online. I think at the IDC, not to add to what Susan from the DTI has said, but just maybe to outline from our side what the process is of applying to the IDC. We have the web, the email setup of recovery@idc.co.za. We have a phone line, as well as our online portal. So from the side of the IDC, we are partnering with the DTIC, NEF, CIFA, and we're working together as a united front from the government. In order to apply, we have now created reduced processes. Chair, and to all colleagues online, it is a rapid response process, which government has now formulated. What it basically means is, if you are affected and you meet the mandate of the IDC, it is not the standard due diligence that will take place as a normal applicant to the IDC. This is a very focused due diligence, one which requires, may I say, limited information. Key to that information is that you need to be affected by the unrest. You need to demonstrate that you have been affected in one way or the other by the unrest. And then secondly, quantify what that loss is. So if you apply online or you send us an email, that goes to a set of coordinators. If it makes the first screening phase, proving that you have been affected and it's within IDC mandate, we have set up a dedicated new team at the IDC to deal with these applications in order to turn them around as fast as we can. And what we call a deal maker or a business development manager from the side of the IDC will be in touch with you within a space of a day and take the process forward. We also are aiming to turn around our approvals very quickly. If we can get all the information, and it's very limited information from the applicants, we will turn it around within a space of a few days, 3 to 4, 5 days. We're pushing as hard as we can to turn this around as fast as we can. We are fully cognizant of the urgency that businesses need the help as fast as possible. And I'd just like to encourage anyone to, please visit our website, look at the brochures, and get in touch with the IDC, should you believe we can help you. We also, we're not turning applicants away. Where we can't help applicants, we are then looking, should the IDC be unable to help you for whatever reason, how can we channel you to another partner that can assist you, the likes of the NEF, the likes of CFA, or any one of the other partners that, are together with us in this initiative, so that, someone is channeled in the appropriate space to get help and not just turned away. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Manoj, for that. I do see also there's some questions which are directed to the UIF. I think Mr. Makosoke, if you can just attend to those, such as that, if some staff have not claimed already, which process would be, I think, followed if they want to start. I think it says which process would be more beneficial for them to apply. If you can probably take some of the questions you may have picked up on the chat besides that, but they are questions that are directed to you. Would you want to comment to that?
Hi, Mr. Klassen. If you can just repeat this very question that we are asking.
Yes, it says that if some staff have not claimed UIF already, which process would be more beneficial for them to apply for? I think that's the first question. And I'm just trying to scroll through some of the questions, but other pertinent issues that also you might like to raise around affected companies. I know one of the companies, like recently, just take note of the question we've asked before so that you don't lose track of what you need to respond to. There's a company which tends to be affected by its workers are going to be most likely laid off for a year or if not 18 months due to them having to rebuild that industry. I'm sure they would want to know what cause can you assist them? They were considering applying for Section 189, so what advice would you give to that company if it still has got interest in reinvesting into the South African economy? It's a manufacturing industry, lead time it's longer to get equipment into the country, etc., but they still want to reinvest. How would you advise them? Because, they can't carry the wage bill on them while workers are not gainfully employed in that sense.
Thank you, Tammy. Well, responding to the very first question about workers of an affected business, they're staying at home. This relief is precisely for that. Is to assist workers from businesses that have been damaged, I would say, as a result of the recent unrest. And as I have already indicated, I indicated that we intend start accepting applications as from next week, Wednesday. There was a question, how are we going to apply? Where are the forms? What we're going to do, we're going to follow the very same system that we are using with TERS. We will provide the spreadsheet that the companies will have to populate. Obviously, the spreadsheet will prompt you to give us certain information that we require for us to assess and evaluate the application. And to the second question, how can we assist this company that is going to take long to rebuild? One option, it will obviously be this temporary relief scheme. But if you are looking at a situation where it's going to take more than, as he said, you commented, 18 months, we do have the normal TERS, not the COVID-19 TERS. We do have the normal TERS where you apply via the CCMA. Because the whole idea about these interventions from UIF/Department of Employment and Labor is job preservation. So through the normal TERS, you can apply through CCMA, and there is a evaluation committee that looks at those applications. And once it's approved, UIF is then able to pay 75% of the salaries. obviously subject to certain conditions. So for that particular employer, I would encourage them to go onto the CCMA website and check out the TERS information. Now, talking about information, for this particular relief that we have for KZN and Gauteng, as I've already indicated, ICT is finalizing the business rules together with the operations in terms of processes and procedures. And once that is all done, hopefully by early next week, we will then be able to take the information out as well and advise publicly where to find the information, the user guides, and so forth, as we have done with TERS. There was a question which I think is very important. I am a business. I operate from a mall as an example, but my business was never looted. But I had to close for security reasons. What do you do? And if you look at the directive says it's for destroyed, affected, looted, and so forth businesses. So we will take that you are affected as a business, and that is directly linked to the recent unrest. So I think what is key there is the proof that you're going to submit to UIF, that as a result of this, I was affected. And I'm answering this question. There was my answer also applies to a question from somebody who I think is from the South African Cane Growers Association. We know that they were also affected by the unrest. So it's the same answer. As long as there is proof, and if we are convinced with the proof that you were indeed affected, I think we will consider the application.
Thank you very much
Tanya.
for that. Yeah. Can I just ask, just be brief on this one? There's one that says, what will happen after 15th of December if companies are not yet back into business? Just, I'm sure it will need your brief response there.
What has been happening with TERS? Remember when we started with TERS, we initially had said the scheme is going to last for 3 months, that being April to June. And then there was a subsequent extension where, which have happened so many times up until now. And I anticipate that even with this relief, there will always be a constant review, as it is saying so in the direction that we will review it every 2 weeks. So even when we get to the 15th of December, if it is clear that many businesses are still affected, I'm sure we will look at that. Obviously, we work with social partners at NETLEC. We will look at that and perhaps there might be an extension, obviously subject to the availability of funds.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Makosonke Buthelezi there. There's a question directed to NEF, and there's another one which is combined to NEF and CFA as well. The second one seems a bit controversial, but I'm sure it requires some response. It says, both NEF and CFA are very biased on their application, on their applicant category, by requesting only South African citizens to be eligible for funding support. All the business around only run by South African citizens. What will happen to the uninsured business owners by non-citizens or permanent residents? So I'm sure any of you can take that one, Mr. Damani, but there's also another one that says the application process in the beginning was quite swift. Could we ask for this to be emailed to us? That is maybe the application itself. Another question is, when is this going to be made available? Is there a closing date? So if you can take us briefly to that, I would appreciate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klase. But maybe let me start with the last one because it's the easiest of these. So the applications are currently open and they remain open. We don't have a specific closing date at the moment. But what we have seen is that, as you would have seen during the announcements, we've set aside about 250 million rand for this particular program. And we actually, and as you correctly pointed out, the application process has been very swift, and we consider these transactions on a daily basis. So we have a committee that sits twice a week. And thus far, we've seen approval of approximately 18 transactions worth over 100 million rand. Because we receive an application today, our aim is that by the end of the week, it should have gone through the process and approved. We've got a number of colleagues on the ground, both in KZN and Gauteng, that are actually dedicated solely to looking at this initiative. So we don't have a set closing date. We will close, it's going to depend on the availability of resources. We're trying to deploy them as swiftly as we can. Now, in terms of who can apply, so what we have done is that we've opened applications. Entities do not necessarily need to be 100% owned because as everyone will know, the NEF funds broad-based Black economic empowerment, but that does not necessarily mean that those businesses must be 100% owned. We do fund businesses if they are 51% BEE owned. And under this particular program, we do consider transactions owned by other categories, not necessarily within the one that I've mentioned. The critical things that we look at is the development impact of those transactions, the jobs that are going to be created. What we say is that the applications, we consider applications for businesses that are lawfully registered in South Africa. If an entity is registered in South Africa, be it a company or a closed corporation, a cooperative, or any other recognized legal entity in terms of South African law, those businesses will be considered under this particular scheme. Now, in terms of the uninsured, we do encourage uninsured people to apply under this scheme. The limits that we have, it's the cap in terms of the amount. We currently have a cap of about 10 million rand in terms of application. Even those who are insured, we've got various options available. There was a question earlier about people waiting for insurance. As we know, SASRIA is inundated with claims at the moment. So we've come up with a bridging facility, and IDC has got a similar offering where we could fund a business while they wait to finalize the SASRIA process. But we do need an undertaking that they would cede the proceeds of those insurance in order to repay the loan once those proceeds are made available by SASRIA. Where they are not insured or they are underinsured, we do have solutions to cover the shortfall on a long-term basis. And also the uninsured, we particularly encourage them to apply for this particular offering because it's available to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mzi, for taking us through that. I don't want to let Ms. Mangole escape these two ones. You know, I want to give you the last bite. And colleagues, do just check some of the questions and try to respond to them because we don't have sufficient time to run through all of them. But Ms. Mangole, there's questions like how companies that suffer due to closure but not directly affected through looting and infrastructure damage can be supported. There was just another one that almost is similar to that one. I'm just going to scroll through. It says, how about those businesses that were not looted, but they were forced to close for safety reasons? And but just take us through those ones as well, Ms. Mangole.
Thanks, Mr. Klassen. I think just to say that in terms of the ones that had to close, the IDC together with the NEF, they offer the working capital facility. And I think from both entities. The MSEP working capital, it's open for manufacturing companies to be able to access, and it's priced at 2.5. So those will be the companies that did not have any damage, but then they were affected because they had to close. Also from the NEF side, they do offer that support in terms of the working capital facility through various support that they offer, especially if they don't have the damage, but then because then they were actually disrupted, they had to close. But then the working capital, it comes as an affordable loan facility available to those companies. Thanks, Mr. Klassen.
Thank you very much for being brief and to the point on that, Ms. Mangole. I think we have got quite a number of questions, and I would trust that the panelists will make time and give some of the responses to the chat, and also probably if colleagues, you have specific questions, all of you that have attended, please do direct those directly to the people. They've got their details, email addresses, and etc., where you can contact them. So thank you very much for the opportunity that you allow government as well to put this package together, informed, of course, by what's currently happening on the ground. And we have to work towards making this process for government, once again, a clean process where, we don't have comebacks with regards to abuse or corruption and things like that. And this is the aim. So do bear with the processes that will be unfolding, as has been alluded to by all the panelists who are just involved in the various efforts, that there will be, applying detail to looking at the applications, etc. It is a very important process so that at the end we have happy citizens. On that note, back to you, Program Director. Happy Friday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tami. TGIF indeed. A happy Friday to you, and thank you to your panelists in unpacking specific questions, because the idea around the dialogue and the webinar is to unpack government's economic recovery package or packages, and to also allow a platform for debate and how best we can implement these interventions. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. Hadebe. We had introduced her a little bit earlier, and to just look at the industry support as well, and how, or the range of support interventions that industry and business are doing in the public-private partnerships, and also in drawing efforts together to ensure that the objectives of creating a stable economy and a nation yield the results that we all want to see. So Ms. Hadebe, back to you, ma'am. Thank you so much again for joining us. And your panel members are Mr. Gregory Mofokeng from Black Business Council, Mr. Kuseni Dlamini from Massmart SA Holdings, and Yunus Hussein from Invest SA. So as you settle in, Ms. Hadebe, while the other panelists are also logging in. It's Women's Month, and I think sometimes we tend to forget just the significance of highlighting the role that women play in the economy and society, and particularly that there are opportunities that are ring-fenced for this designated group. So welcome, Ms. Hadebe, and it's over to you. Thank you.
Thanks again, Cindy, and I hope we are sorted now. Can you all hear me? Because
yes,
that's the struggle of today, the visual arrangement. Yes, indeed, as you have said, that I think we've heard quite a lot from the government side of things, government and the entities like IDC, NEF, CIFA, and UIF. But at this point in time, we would like just to get a sense from the industry side of things, as they are also at the coalface of these challenges through their members and investments. We've seen staggering figures, the number of businesses that are affected, the billions that have been lost, and the job losses, not to mention the job losses, which is why it is really important that we have this discussion and get a sense from our industry stakeholders on what sort of support and efforts they have going to support the recovery process. You have already introduced the panel members that we have, Gregory Mofokeng, the Vice President for Organized Businesses at Black Business Council, with a range of stakeholders or members in their portfolio. Mr. Kuseni Dlamini, the chairman of NESMAT, we also had a lot in terms of the impact on the stores that is within the NESMAT portfolio, and Yunus Hussein, whom we all know, the head of investment SA, because in this whole discussion and the efforts, we have to also think about the investment community as well, the support and the management thereof. Perhaps we can start by giving our panelists, if you allow us, in 3 minutes each for their initial observations. Then we will take it from there, because the discussions for now in the chat are mainly more on the government and entity support. I think that will give us a bit of meat to start the discussion on the industry side. If it's fine, can I start with you, Greg, from your side, and then you can give us your observation. Then we can move to Tate Kuseni and Eunice in that order. Then we'll go back and manage the discussions. Thanks. Yes, over to you, Greg.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I hope that I'm audible. We've been having technical challenges throughout the morning. I'm hoping that I can be heard loud and clear. And let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this session for inviting us as the Black Business Council to obviously present what we're experiencing through our members on the ground, and what our expectations are, and what has been our engagements with the stakeholders at NEDLAC. Chair of the session, we are inundated with inquiries from members as to what kind of assistance is available for them to restart their businesses, and where this assistance is available. We have obviously communicated sufficiently to some of the members in terms of the information that we have received from government, including the program that has been introduced and has been launched here today. The impact has been quite extensive, because it is not only the big companies that have suffered. A lot of small businesses have also suffered immensely as a result of what transpired. When you look at the business ecosystem, you will see that in a typical shopping mall, yes, you will have the big tenants that are occupying there, but there's also a lot of small businesses that also occupy those shopping malls, and they are impacted. You will also have a lot of other businesses that supply those businesses that are operating in the shopping malls. And so those are also impacted. We also have a lot of businesses, small businesses that are operating both in the city centers and in the townships that have, again, been impacted by this. And obviously, when one drives around, I mean, if you take a drive around some of the townships, you will still see that a lot of businesses are still closed. And this does not only impact on the big businesses, as I said, it also impacts on the small businesses as well. What are we worried about, Chair, at this stage is that we are worried about the speed with which these applications are going to be processed. Yes, we had the presentation from our colleague at the IEDC that there is now a dedicated process that is now in place, and that they will try and fast track the processing of the applications. And we are hoping that this time around, we can get our act together as government entities to be able to respond appropriately to this, because our experience, especially with the TERS arrangement, was that applications were not speedily processed. And what happened was that it seemed more like a black hole, where people were just submitting and there was no response in most of the cases. And there was a challenge in getting hold of a person from, for instance, in the UIF, who could be able to respond to a query by a specific company. So we are hoping that this time around, we've learned from the TERS experience, and that this will be issues that are ironed out and that we are not going to experience those challenges here. The other issue that we are worried about, Chair, is corruption. We have seen it with TERS again, that once this kind of an arrangement was put in place, we had people with corrupt intent coming in and actually hijacking the system. We were happy with the fact that there were some arrests that happened as a result of the corruption that happened under TERS. And we are hoping that our systems this time around, are fortified so that we do not have these opportunistic elements coming through with their corrupt actions. The last issue, Chair, that we are worried about as the Black Business Council is obviously looking at the other side. We are business, Chair, and one of the issues that we're already witnessing is that the beneficiaries of all this work that must be done now is now the white-owned businesses, to the exclusion of Black businesses. Let me make an example here. If you look at what is happening with Sastria, for instance, and we've had an engagement with Sastria in the past week or so, the loss assessors that are now going out to ascertain the loss are mainly white companies. The people that are being called to come and fix the damage that was caused are also white companies. And you find that when you then engage the insurance companies and Sastria to say, where are the Black companies that are supposed to also be included in the work that must be done, the answer that we get is that they don't know where Black business is. Now, this is amazing that in a country where 90% of the people are Black, you find that insurance companies are saying that they don't know where Black suppliers and service providers are. So we are very much worried about this, Chair, and we are hoping that with our engagements with Sastria, this will be corrected. The insurance companies remain elusive at this stage. We've tried to engage with them, but they are not coming to the party. And I'm hoping that as we go forward, the likes of SAIA, which represent the insurance companies, will be engaged so that we can start the process of transforming their databases and we can see more Black businesses coming through to benefit from this, the work that the insurance companies are doing. Chair, lastly, we have made an offer to government through NEDLEC and National Treasury, that as the Black Business Council, we remain ready to assist using the network of our member associations throughout these two provinces to assist with application processes where members can come in and we assist them to apply for this assistance. And number two, we are hoping that we can then have an opportunity to sit down with our colleagues at the IDC so that when we get complaints, we have a dedicated line where those complaints can be channeled and they can be speedily resolved. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Greg, for that input. I think you've raised quite fundamental issues here on small business because we're not affected equally, as well as the processes, corruption, and the inclusivity of the process. We will come back to you as well to maybe you've started answering some of the things on how we can move forward on the areas that you've highlighted, the collaboration with the DFIs. But while we think about that, can we move to Ntetekuseni Dlamini from Ms. Mart as indicated for your inputs there as well? Then we will take it from there. Thanks. Oh, sorry, just before that, I have been made aware that we also have Mr. John Lulu from Busa, who's also part of the panel. We have not forgotten about you. Sorry, it was an error from my side. We'll come to you as well, Mr. Lulu. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a great honor and privilege to be part of this very important discussion on rebuilding from the ashes of the looting that we experienced. From a Massmart point of view, we are severely affected in KwaZulu-Natal and parts of Gauteng. But the posture that we've deliberately decided to take is that we're not going to be defeated. We want to emerge out of this very strongly. We quickly shifted to really focus on the 3 R's across our business. That is recovering, rebuilding, and reopening our stores. And as part of this effort, we also realized that our colleagues, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, were affected quite severely, especially our 8,000 employees that we have there. We had to provide them and their families with food hampers while we were focusing on the recovery. We also had to look at our supply chains and reactivate them and rechannel them to make sure that we supply goods where they were needed the most, which in this case was very much the stores down in the coast. So we have to take products from inland down to the coast, down the N3 to KZN, and that was a priority for us to focus on. But what was also important for us were the communities, because we do not do business in isolation. We don't do business in an island. We are part and parcel of those communities where our stores are located. We also had to consider the plight of the communities where food was in significant shortages. There were really like shops that were empty. I was down there just during the week of the route myself, sorry for myself, how desperate the situation was. So we quickly mobilized our resources together with the Walmart Foundation in the United States. We set aside 13 million rand to be able to mobilize food supplies to needy communities and needy people in KwaZulu-Natal. We managed to secure 200 tons of food that we distribute to needy communities in KZN on a daily basis. As I'm talking to you, ladies and gentlemen, we are humbled that we are able to help between 120,000 and 150,000 people per day out of the effort that the Massmart and the Walmart Foundation managed to sort of mobilize and put together. That is very, very important. And the other important part is just the really business government collaboration and the leadership that has been shown by the authorities at a provincial and national level. Has really been very inspiring. And as a business, we've been engaged with all those discussions and we'll continue to be part of those very important conversations on how do we rebuild, how do we build back better and faster together. And the support in the collaboration and cooperation that has been unleashed by the riots and the looting is really commendable. It's really excellent. To me, it brought the best out of what we're capable of as South Africans, how good we are to sort of respond to a crisis. So that is very, very important to us. So we've got about 43 stores that were damaged and looted, and we're busy now with the rebuilding. Some of them, luckily, they're back in operation. We've reopened them. We'll be opening more in the next month or so. And some may take longer than others, especially our macro stores that were damaged in Pietermaritzburg and Springfield, and our distribution center in River Hose Valley in Durban will also take a bit of time. And luckily, though, on the distribution center side, we were already, well advanced with plans to build a new state-of-the-art distribution center in KZN, which now we will be fast-tracking and hopefully opening in the near future to be able to just make up for the destruction that we've already suffered. For us, that's very, very important. So we really have a two-pronged strategy in rebuilding. We're rebuilding what has been destroyed in KZN, the macro store that I mentioned in Maritzburg, as well as Springfield and our distribution center. But what we have said and what to the authorities and what we're saying to the public is that we still are very committed to investing in the growth and development of KwaZulu-Natal and the Gauteng province. These are very critical provinces to our businesses, and we're long-term investors in both provinces and indeed across the country. We are looking beyond just rebuilding what was destroyed. We're also looking for opportunities to invest even more, build more stores, create more jobs, really expand access to our supply chain. What is also critical in terms of our business philosophy is local sourcing. In all the provinces and countries where we operate, we always want to source from local partners. We operate across 13 countries in West Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa. And our first port of call is to look at partnering with local suppliers. And we've done an incredible job with our Supplier Development Fund, which has supported over 24 companies who are supplying our stores in South Africa. Some are even able to export to our stores outside of South Africa. Others are even able to access the global supply chain of Walmart. We work with Walmart to assist South African companies to penetrate the global Walmart supply chain. We brought in buyers from the Walmart head office in Bentonville, Arkansas, to come to South Africa to meet with a number of South African suppliers. And I'm very pleased as chairman of the business that out of those engagements, some South African companies have managed to get some of their goods listed in Walmart stores in the United States. And I think as we rebuild Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, it's important to look at the local imperative of creating jobs and sustaining existing jobs, but it's also important to use this as an opportunity to really globalize the footprint of local South African manufacturers and suppliers, because the world is full of opportunities out there. Some of the successes that we've seen within our business inspire us to think that actually this needs a whole of society approach where we all reorient our mindsets and reset our focus to really look at capturing opportunities, yes, at a local level, start building a very strong and successful and solid base at a local level, then go to the regional level, which is the African market, but there are also lots of opportunities out in the global supply chains that form part of the global economy. And there's nothing that prevents any of us participating in this call or people that we know, businesses, to be able to really globalize their footprints, to be able to penetrate global supply chains. And I think that would be key to sustaining an inclusive and growing economy, an economy that's creating jobs, because it's really ultimately about jobs at the end of the day. It's about economic growth, growing our GDP, having an unemployment rate amongst the youth of over 70%. Is just a time bomb that we should all be worried about, and we should all try and do something to try and make sure that we rectify as effectively and as quickly as we possibly can. And the packages that the authorities have put together are very encouraging indeed. Minister Ibrahim Patel announced the 4 billion rand or so, 3.7 billion rand package, which is really great to help us to rebuild from this mayhem. And the key thing is really to try and make sure that we use it smarter, we use it effectively, that it go where it's supposed to go, and that there is no repeat of some of the things we saw with the PPE process in some parts of the country. And I think it requires us to work together. I think there is enough goodwill and enough capabilities. There are enough capabilities that can make sure that the resources that they are used smartly. And I know that the private sector is also actively engaged with looking at ways of rebuilding. We just need to mobilize all the resources from both the private sector and the public sector and make sure that we get a bang for our buck, as it were, in terms of deploying the rands and cents that are there to rebuild. Because if we delay the rebuilding process and we talk longer, we may find that we get ourselves plunged into another socio-economic crisis because of people just being too desperate and not having jobs and not having food and not having ways to earn decent livings. And it's upon us to make sure that we give people the right alternatives, which is about people having skills and people being able to get decent jobs and decent lives in the process. I believe that if we work together in partnership and in collaboration, we can be able to do that. And thank you very much. I'll just pause there for now.
Thank you, Kuseni, for that. I think that there's quite a lot of inputs that we've received via our chat channels, which maybe let me just give you time to scroll through. Some obviously a bit specific and require follow-up, but the gist of the rebuilding that you've said and how do businesses access the supply chain as part of the building process, and if there are any rules and regulations and processes you've streamlined, particularly for this process, because there is a question around the offtake purchase agreement being difficult. With the rebuilding, are there things or systems that you are going back and relooking? But while you're scrolling through, we'll come back to you. Can I introduce Eunice on the investment side of things, and then we'll go back to all our panels to touch base on all the questions that we've had, also use the time for their closing remarks as well, because we don't have liberty of time. Eunice, over to you. It's gone quiet. Can you hear me?
Ms. Hadebe, I think Eunice hasn't logged in as yet.
Okay. Okay.
So,
No.
Chairman, you just want me to deal with some of the questions you've raised?
Yes. That's perfectly fine. Let's do that, and then we will come back to you after Kuseni as well.
So, in as far as our supply chain is concerned in accessing it, we really are a very open business. It's really about contacting us and reaching us. And we've got teams that assist with the onboarding process in terms of what the criteria is and what's expected. And we encourage people to engage with us directly. We're very open to engage. We're very open to look for partners that we can work with, because as a retailer, we are actually a route to the market. We're like a conduit between our suppliers and the end consumer. So we would like to be open to people with ideas and good products that we can be able to supply to our end consumers. So that is something that for us it's very key. In as far as what are we going to do differently now because of the building, the rebuilding process, I think by and large our processes have always been super efficient. We just have to look at how we make them even better. Even when COVID hit us, we did look at what must we do differently in order to make sure that our suppliers, can still access us efficiently, can work with us that much, effectively. I think even now we apply the same kind of logic and thinking and planning, just to make sure that there are no impediments or hurdles that people encounter along the way.
Thanks for that. And I will certainly definitely encourage that the team, the MESMA team, really go through the questions and follow up on all the specific requests for contacts and the specific issues that challenges that some of the participants have highlighted in the chat. I see, Eunice, you've joined us, but can I go back to Greg so that when we come to you, we towards the end of the discussion as well, because you'll also be closing the session.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's mainly from the small business, just a bit specific on what sort of assistance you're supporting them on. And then if we still have Mr. Sbiya, the issue that you've raised about the black or the white, the bias towards white companies, if it's something they've thought about it as well, or if you've had an engagement on how it's being addressed, so that we close that, and all other issues that you might want to close on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, Chair, the issue of how we are assisting, we are obviously in contact with our members through the associations that are affiliated to us, and these are business associations that are operating in the localities where we experienced this unfortunate incident. Now, obviously, through them, we are compiling information in terms of which companies and businesses have been affected, and that will obviously be sent through to the relevant authorities. We are now communicating with those associations to then advise their members to apply directly through the platforms that have been provided. And one of the issues, Chair, that came up here earlier is the whole issue around companies and SMEs that are not registered. Now, this is very important because if you look at the damage that was caused, I mean, small businesses such as hair salons were damaged, spaza shops were damaged, and some of these are not registered. So I think, our DFIs must look at this carefully because it does not mean that those businesses do not need assistance. I mean, if you look at in the chat box, one of the participants in the chat box spoke about gas bottles that have been damaged or stolen. Now, for a small business, that's a huge investment. But for a big business, of course, it's a very minor, loss. So we need to look at, these businesses and look at specifically what kind of assistance must be provided to even the micro businesses that have suffered a loss of 10 or 20,000 rands. To others, it might be something that is very small, but to them is quite extensive damage that they have incurred. So we want to, out of this engagement, we will definitely be engaging CIFA as well as the NEF, because I think the colleague from the IDC was clear that they might not be in a position to assist those micro enterprises. We will definitely engage CIFA and the NEF on how such micro enterprises can then be assisted, because everybody needs to be assisted here, because everybody was impacted by this looting and the damage caused to our businesses. That's number one. Number two, it is very important that we ensure inclusivity, Chair. And this we are very much clear on, and we are not apologetic about the fact that companies that are benefiting as we speak are white-owned companies, and nobody seems to be questioning this. These monies that are going to be paid even under this program, the IDC, the NEF, and CIFA will have to come and account to the business fraternity to say who benefited out of this. If you paid 10 million rands for a particular building to be fixed, we want to know who got that opportunity to fix that building, and what is their BEE status. We cannot be apologetic about this, and we can't be told that because it's an emergency, Black businesses cannot be assisted. We do not accept that. Even in this emergency, Black businesses are here, and businesses must benefit. Finally, this gives us an opportunity, Chair and colleagues, to reset how our township economies are structured. We need more ownership of the shopping malls. We need more ownership of businesses in and around our townships. So when Mr. Kuseli says that they are now going to ensure that more and more companies, local companies supply Massmart, we welcome that. And we want to then say to him that we want to look forward to a situation where Massmart and his buyers are specific and deliberate in terms of making sure that they buy from Black South Africans, women-owned businesses, and youth-owned businesses, because they obviously do business in our townships, they do business in our cities, where the bulk of the buyers are Black people. The Black community supports Massmart, and in return, we expect Massmart to come out and be supportive of those businesses that want to do business with Massmart. So we look forward to the broadening of the supplier base that Massmart is busy with, and we do think that this is an opportunity to reset the ownership of our economies in the townships, in the cities, and the country as a whole, because we need more Black people to come in and start supplying and owning shopping malls and manufacturing concerns. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for that. There is a request that can we please answer the questions in the Q&A. Suppose it is a bit difficult to manage all the chats and try and get the gist of the discussion, but please, Greg, Kuseni, Eunice as well, if you can assist and answer. I don't know whether it will be live even after the discussions are done. Mr. Sbia, do you have maybe 30 seconds of your time on the insurance issue to close on that matter?
Yes, I think Mr. Mufokeng has forgotten about me. We had an engagement on this matter when these issues came up, and we've spoken about it, and how we can use the services from the Black Business Council. And we were submitted the profiles of organizations that we can work with. So at the moment, there is an undertaking and a serious intention to give Black business an opportunity to participate in what we are doing. So that's where we are. And I think we'll take the rest of the topic with the Black Business Council.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Chair, on the questions that you want us to answer, maybe
Yep.
as the program director, if you can guide us on that, what questions we need to answer. Or unless
Okay.
you can also allow people to ask their questions so that we can deal with them. But I just wanted to respond to Mr. Mofokeng and assure him that
Okay.
we are indeed prioritizing sourcing from Black businesses. Our Supplier Development Fund, which I mentioned, which has assisted 24 companies, more than 24 companies. Most of those companies will be female-owned, will be Black-owned, will be owned by young people, really very much linked to driving the transformation agenda. And indeed, in all communities where we go, we look for suppliers. In all the provinces where we operate, we've got suppliers in KZN that are rooted there, supplying us, in Gauteng that are here. It is very much at the core of our business. And I think we're very united with the need to advance and deepen the transformation project and democratize supply chains and allow access to historically excluded players in our supply chains in South Africa and elsewhere in the world. Indeed, those that can also be able to take advantage of the export opportunities that are there from our group.
Thanks. And maybe what will assist there is, I don't know, maybe on this chat, if it's possible that Mesmat, you just give the contacts of the regional offices or where people can contact Mesmat, because most of the questions is really just to get to be connected to Mesmat and access to contacts on how they take their business forward, yes, and their ideas.
Thank you very much, Chair. Our contacts are available on our website. We're a public company. Our head office contacts are there, so colleagues can just use those contacts to access us.
Thanks for that. And then lastly, it is on your side. We've kept you waiting for quite some time now, but let me just hand over to you, and then we'll see how it goes, if there's still an opportunity to do Q&A, or you can also then handle the last session. Thanks.
Thank you, Program Director and fellow panelists. I think from our side at InvestSA, I think a lot has been spoken about the financial support. So maybe I'll just start off with some of the areas in terms of non-financial support. Immediately following the unrest, what the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition through the Competition Commission issued a notice in terms of block exemptions. In this block exemptions, we could allow the private sector to collaborate and cooperate with each other in terms of critical supplies or essential supplies that was disrupting the supply chain. And InvestSA worked with a number of suppliers in terms of getting the supply chain, particularly in food and in the healthcare sector, up and running. So that was one of the first attempts in response to the unrest non-financially. Secondly, we looked at those companies that were completely destroyed. The production of plants were completely destroyed through ITEC, which is the International Trade and Administration Commission. We issued a notice on the 412 rebate, which allows companies to import product for a short period of time on a rebate of duty, as long as they have an indication or a plan to set up an investment in terms of their facilities that was destroyed. So those were two of the major non-financial support measures. And then what we did as InvestSA is to collaboratively with the DTI, we manned the recovery at the dtic.gov.za email address, in which we've been able to assist companies both financially and non-financially unblock and fast track issues. And one of the areas, for example, was in the blockages at the port. which we worked very well with Transnet to assist companies to bring in things. So given that period, that was difficulty, and also now in areas, for example, critical medical supplies, that we were able to release cargo and work with companies. So I think those are some of the areas. And as the team mentioned, that we have a DTIC team, an IDC team, an NEF team down in KZN that are looking at companies, assessing companies to see how we can provide them that measure of financial support. I think the program today is quite comprehensive and holistic in terms of the level of support from both all the DFIs, IDC, NEF, as well as SASTRIA and UIF. What we would like is that you've seen the contact details that Susan put on the last slide for you to contact and make applications to the system, and then we can also then through the recovery email assist you to fast track, or if issues are outstanding, and get back to you and tell you what is outstanding and work with you, because we are eager to rebuild, to preserve the jobs, to maintain the supply chains, and to create those jobs, and to build and rebuild better. So those are some of the things that we are doing as Invest SA, but through that recovery at the dtic.gov.za, we are able to assist you throughout the journey in terms of responding on providing clarity on financial packages, as well as areas that you would require non-financial support. We have also, for example, worked very well and closely with the Intigweni municipality, which has established a one-stop shop at the convention center to assist companies to complete their application forms and to advise them. But more importantly, as you move on in your business, in terms of demolition permits, site development plans, environmental impact plans if there's new buildings, and so forth, to fast track, particularly those companies that were involved in the unrest, those regulatory issues, so that you can be up and running as quick as possible. So program directors, those are some of the measures that we are putting in place holistically through national, provincial, and local government and the DFIs and state-owned entities to support the recovery, as well as, in this case, particularly the rebuild program following the unrest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Before there hasn't been any particular. Okay, we do have just one question that has come through, Eunice, maybe where you can assist to answer, which is from Mel Grace. It just come through, but it's more on the innovation. I think it's an innovation institute in Cape Town, where they do have a method to fast track market creation innovations with their students. If you want to explore that discussion further with Mel Grace. And then I had dropped a note for Kuseni. I don't know whether you saw it. Probably one of the things that business here or participants wanted to know as well. Eunice as well, you can touch on it, on how business and government are collaborating to make sure that this does not happen again, or we prepared for the next time as well. Thanks. At this point in time, I will, Cindy, because we ran out of time, I will hand over to you after those questions, and then you can take over the sessions. Thank you so much.
So if I might take that question, Program Director, we are working very closely with the government at the national and provincial level, and also local level, in terms of sharing information and resources. We're in constant contact. I think it's a great question that it's that has been raised, in the sense that without the collaboration between government and business, when this thing happens again, we will be found wanting, and we dare not be found wanting as we were, because we were all unprepared for the events that we saw unfolding that we're talking about today. So it is very important going forward that business and government works together. But what is also very important from my perspective is for businesses and communities to work together. We saw how Maponya Mall was secured. It was secured not by the South African police or the South African National Defence Force. It was the community that stood up and said, not in our watch. So I think for businesses going forward and communities, we really need to stand shoulder to shoulder, build a social compact, and we must work towards promoting social cohesion in all the communities where we operate, deal with all the social issues, the issues of poverty, unemployment, inequality, lack of social welfare facilities. I think that has to be as much a concern for business going forward as it is for government, and indeed as it is for the communities. I think the key thing is really dealing with the root causes of this. I mean, the root causes, amongst other things, there are many things. I don't want to be simplistic, but we cannot deny the fact that the levels of poverty and unemployment and inequality that are out there in our communities, they are a contributory factor amongst a mosaic of other factors that may be contributing as well. Thank you.
Program Director, I responded to Mel that he could contact me on my email. I think that there is a great spirit and a partnership now with business and government, and that was the meeting also the president had with key business as well as chambers recently on the unrest and hearing the plans and the plans put forward. I think there's a far greater collaboration, and particularly in what Kusini has mentioned, and Massmart is leading the way in companies developing supplier development and localization plans in communities and in districts. So I think that's something that is we can look forward to working more collaboratively on. But Program Director, I see Mr. John Lulu from BUSA is here. I don't know if I would appreciate maybe if we can give him the last few minutes to make an input from BUSA's side and how BUSA business and government has been working together during this time. Over to you, Program Director.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. I do have to, I have handed over to Cindy. My apologies. I do have to log out now at 11, and apologies for that. But thank you for the indulgence. Thanks, Cindy. Over to you. Oh, sorry, Mr. Lulu, over to you, and then Cindy. Thanks. Bye bye.
Good morning, everyone, and apologies for joining late. I was in another BUSA engagement with Productivity South Africa. I think 2 or 3 points from our side to welcome the initiative taken by government proactively, and that this time around, unlike last year when the pandemic first hit our shores, the government has been very inclusive, consultative, and has been open-minded. We've been pleasantly surprised by the posture taken by the National Treasury, and we welcome this. And we hope that what we do is we listen quite intently and attentively to the voices on the ground about the design of these solutions. So welcome, and I hope this is not the end, but how we refine these measures so that help gets to those who desperately need it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hadebe, and your esteemed panelists. I hope that we've satisfied the questions, especially around the economic recovery packages accessible made available by government and the various agencies to restore businesses that have been affected by vandalism and the recent unrest. We have come to the end of the program, but I want to implore you, especially for those whose questions we weren't able to cover, to please engage with the various departments and the Development Finance Institute, the ministry. These are the contact details for the DTIC recovery at the dtic.gov.za, or you can contact them on 0800 006 543, 0800 006 543, or recovery@idc.co.za, recovery@nef.co.za, where we are located. So we hope that it has been a fruitful and productive, informative session for you, and that you'll engage with us as we unpack a series of these platforms as well. My name is Cindy Mabi. Thank you very much for your time, and may you have yourselves a wonderful day. Mr. Yunus, I hope I haven't overstepped the protocol, sir, because with your summation that it is imperative for government and the private sector to work together, and DDG and also our executives, if you may allow to please then close the session as we have come to the end of the program. Thank you very much, and may you be abundantly blessed. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, everybody. And Cindy, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you to all the presenters and the facilitators. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all.
May you be abundantly blessed. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, everybody. And Cindy, you did a fantastic job.